Hello. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. My name is Molly Blanco, and I work on the marketing team here at Reputation, and I am so excited to introduce the stars of today's show. We have Reputation CEO Joe Fuca and Reputation Chief Product Officer Pranav Desai. All right. Thank you both so much for your time and all of the wonderful attendees we have on today. Thank you so much for your time as well today. All right, let's go into the agenda, and I'll kind of give you a quick setup of how today's webinar is going to be structured. First, we want to give you kind of a brief overview of what we're seeing in the market as it pertains to customer feedback and how that's growing and expanding as those touch points get larger and more fragmented. And then also how the Reputation platform really helps you manage all of those various touch points at scale. And then we want to help you understand how you can manage all of that for your business so that you can see your organization identify the key areas for growth. And then once you know where you are, you're going to want to know where your competition is as well. So we'll be able to help you get some insight as to how you can identify some of those opportunity areas. And then once you have all that information, what do you do about it? And what actions can you really take for that growth opportunity? All right, so I think we want to kick things off with a really quick audience poll, and just to kind of get a quick gauge of our audience today. So we want to know how many people have a login to the Reputation platform today. There's no wrong answer. Wow. Okay. All right. I was like, I love live polls. All right, cool. All right. 80-20 rule. Oh, okay. Gosh, darn it. It moves. All right, cool. All right, very interesting. Thank you so much. All right, so next, we're going to start diving in. I'm going to turn it over to Joe really quickly. But first, I have another really quick poll before we dive into kind of the main content of today's webinar. And that's really just when we think about the different buckets of feedback, we want to get an understanding of today, what buckets of feedback touch points would you say your organization is responding to today? You can select all that apply. So reviews, surveys. So that's like more of that one-to-one private, satisfaction surveys, or just like your general social posts, or all of the above. All right. All the above is winning. All right.
This is like live feedback. I love this.
I know. What would you say, like watching NBA finals and seeing like who's going to win, who's going to end up?
It is interesting that 10% is surveys, though. It's the lowest of the three. I'm sure Pranav has an opinion. All right, cool.
So that probably has a part.
How long are you giving them, Molly?
I think we're good. So yeah, I would say, Joe, I can turn it over to you to kind of dig into what you're seeing in the market as far as customer feedback goes, and really how you've kind of set up the Reputation platform, you and Pranav, to really manage all of this.
Well, first, I just want to welcome everybody. Thank you for coming this morning. Hope everybody's summer is off to a good start. I know Pranav and I wore our polo shirts today because we want to give you guys that summer feeling. But anyways, welcome all the customers and all our prospects. We have some material for you today that we think is super interesting, and it's a little bit from our Transform event, but also just some new things that Pranav and I are working through on the roadmap, as well as some great feedback from our customers. So we're looking forward to sharing that with you. For those of you that are new, let me just give you a couple quick slide commercial on who we are. We're Reputation. We're kind of known for our reputation score, which is our ability to tell you how you're doing in the wonderful world of reputation management. But as you can see here on the slide, we're trusted by some of the most largest companies in the world, as well as medium size and small. And so whether it's thousands of dealerships or thousands of hospitals or thousands of doctors or thousands of properties that are being managed, it's really important to us to have one platform to help them not only send surveys, listen to surveys, understand digital feedback, and be able to track all of that information and be able to respond to it. So you'll see many things that impact our experience, whether it's patients, shoppers, residents, or diners. The idea here is to understand what the feedback is so you can actually put it into action. So if you go to the next slide, the quick commercial on what we do as a company is we built this platform. And you'll hear things like solicited and unsolicited, and then fancy words for saying, well, unsolicited is when people leave you feedback that you didn't ask for. And they just leave it for you in reviews, or they'll actually come in off of Google My Business page and communicate with you through a message, or they might leave a tweet about you. Those are unsolicited activities. And then you have solicited activities where I'm sending a survey based on data that I want you to share with me. You might not share all your data, but it's very regimented, structured data. And there's all types of ways that we can solicit your data information. We can do that on the website. We can do it through our product called Feedback Anywhere, where we pull in data from anybody's source. And so just think of us as this platform that can not only track the unsolicited communication, but also the solicited, and then pull that together in one single inbox so that if I'm answering a message, if I'm answering a lead, if I'm answering a negative review, some kind of crazy survey response, it's all done on one inbox. And we'll talk to you about that today because it's part of our new releases over the last year. We've released versions of the inbox, and we've got all kinds of really cool things to talk to you about today on what we're going to be doing with that. And then Pranav's going to actually talk a little bit about journey mapping, and you'll kind of see how that all fits together here as we start to talk about the customer journey and what that looks like. So again, what makes us different? Location data management, all integrated on a platform with all of your customer data, and then having the data science to go back in and understand that and be able to turn that into feedback that we can actually use to improve our business. You can go to the next slide. So just to finish up on the commercial, for those of you that are attending from anywhere in the world, I wanted you to see where we're located. Most people in the US know that we're located in Chicago, Scottsdale, Lehigh, and now San Ramon, which is northern part of California. But maybe people don't know that we have our location in Liverpool in the UK, and we have locations in both Germany and France, with our largest customer from France, Renault. We've now built out an office there, and we're doing some really cool things with Renault that we'll talk about during this presentation. And then we have a very large office in Hyderabad in India, and we're opening up a new office there that we're all excited about. But there's a couple hundred people from Reputation there. So that's your global support, which is super important that you know that we're there for you should you become a customer. All right, there's your Reputation commercial. Let's go on. All right, we're going to start talking a little bit about the concept of understanding all listening posts. If you look at this particular statistic from Forrester, surveys only capture between 2 and 7.5% of the interactions. And if you think about most traditional CX programs, NPS-like programs, they're all using surveys to track. Nothing wrong with that. But if you're getting 2 and 7%, now you're in a very solicited environment where you're only getting that kind of percentage feedback. So you're really not seeing the complete picture, right? And so if you go to the next slide, we're going to talk a little bit about what this customer journey looks like. And this is super important. I always say if there's one slide that you get, it's actually the next one. But this particular slide, the consumer journey is very different for CX traditionalists as well as online reputation management traditionalists. Because if you think about it, we've always thought about either the front end of awareness and acquisition and is the consumer interested versus how are they making decisions to buy versus advocacy and keeping them as loyal customers. So if you think about this journey, Pranav's going to spend some pretty good quality time with you today talking about, well, what are we doing to help you in this journey? Because this is a very different journey than just looking at the back half or the front half. If you go to the next slide, these are great examples. So if there's, like I said, there's one slide you get today, Pranav and I are going to kind of drill into this a little bit. Think about having one platform that covers both the awareness side. So where are my leads? Where are people coming from to find my location? If I'm a doctor, are they checking me out on Google My Business? If I'm a hospital, where are they finding me? Depending on where they are, we want to be able to track how they're coming into our site and then be able to see if they're interested. Heck, they might message me directly from that Google panel or Apple Maps, and I want to be able to respond to that. So that's the whole awareness side. And a lot of our customers think that that's super important, and that might be where they stop, just doing business listings and managing that whole awareness side. But then there's the whole side of, well, how am I going to purchase? What's that decision look like? Well, I might want to look to see if that customer has got really good reviews. And let me tell you something. People are using Google star ratings now in the boardroom on Monday board meetings every single week in some of the biggest, most unbelievable companies like Kaiser Permanente, where they're using Google star ratings in that CEO report every week now. Why is that? Because people care about the reputation and they care about whether they're going to get good care. So that's that whole concept of you've got awareness, you've got, okay, I want to purchase, I want to check to see if they're a really good company to work with. And then there's the whole idea of retention and advocacy, where kind of your traditional CX players play. But you need to have the whole piece, right? Unsolicited, solicited, acquisition side, as well as the loyalty side. And so hopefully as we go through today and talk to you about different pieces of our platform, we're going to hit this journey for you in and out. So let's go to the next slide.
All right, Joe, I think we have a poll, another one.
A quick poll.
Quick poll. All right, everyone. When you think about your customer journey today, where do you see the largest gaps today? You can select all that applies. Is it that pre-transaction experience? Is it trying to determine who your advocates are? Or who are those unhappy customers that you want to try and turn that experience around for them? Or is it all the above? Do 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 do. Wow. Okay. Interesting. We've got some ties. It looks like this is pretty even, Steven. I thought this was also really interesting. I did want to ask a really quick question too. This can go to either Joe or Pranav. When you're thinking about that pre-transaction experience, I think we have some customers today that have given us some really interesting anecdotal feedback about how they differentiate those prospects and where they come in during that pre-transaction process. So can you talk about some examples of what that might look like as far as pulling in some of that pre-transaction feedback?
Yep. So Molly, I think the place where most consumers find businesses, and this is an example from the storage industry, but it could apply to any industry. The place where most consumers find businesses and become prospects for that business, or a lead, as Joe mentioned, is Google today. And everything starts on Google Business Profiles, previously known as Google My Business. And what we see is that a majority of them want a very easy way to communicate with you. 2 years ago, it was phone calls. You would get a bunch of phone calls where they're putting in inquiries, and it was difficult to understand that feedback from them. Now, Google is increasingly starting to feature a chat button on the profile. And so what we see, especially with customers like the one I mentioned in storage, they get a bunch of prospects coming in on Google My Business or Google Business Profiles, asking them questions, providing them feedback. And what ends up happening is customers, people that are already doing business with them, end up being on Facebook and Twitter, because those are associated with social care. So the fact that they're using these social channels is a given. The fun part is the prospects tend to prefer Google versus the existing customers tend to prefer Facebook and Twitter.
I think that's so interesting. All right. So sales, new prospects come from Google. We want to make sure that everything's super buttoned up in that area. And then as far as social, just really making sure that you're engaging with those customers and making them super happy. All right, cool. All right. I will turn the floor back over to you guys.
Great. So when we have this kind of data, we talk about how are we doing? What are we learning from the customer feedback? Because at the end of the day, you can have all these listening posts, but if you're not taking action on them, then you're really not completing the whole process, right? So if you go to the next slide, everybody's approach should be unique to them, but more importantly, you really need the complete picture. So if you look at this example, you could have private surveys that get you all kinds of data, which is important, and there's nothing wrong with that. But remember, that's what your customers are willing to say to you. In the public format, it's what your customers are saying about you, right? So very different. So if you go to the next slide, you can kind of see what we're thinking here as we start to look at some of the complete platform approach. You've got both private and public feedback here. You could have 60% of your feedback be private, very common, right? This is one customer use case, and 40% being public feedback. And so what does that really look like? Well, if you go to the next slide, it gets really interesting, because now as we start to look at maybe particular industries or any specific items that you would do, if you start looking at the reputation platform and you pull out areas that are super important. So in the private feedback, right, let's say it's communication sticks out a little bit, our competence, these are themes that we found with negative sentiment, right? You guys talked about wanting to know your detractors. I love that question, Molly. But at the same time, you also want to know what are the themes that are feeding that negative detractor, right? And so in this particular case, cleanliness didn't rate that high. So obviously either they didn't ask the right question in their survey, or the customers just weren't being honest with you in a private survey, because guess what? You know who they are in some cases. And so if you look at that private feedback and then you look at the public feedback together and you overlap them, now you start to get some interesting things like, okay, communication stayed the same. We got to work on our negative communication. But what about our competence? Okay, about the same. Well, now cleanliness is bubbling up. Okay, so now people are willing to talk about the dirty bathrooms or the dirty ER facility or what have you. They're willing to talk a little bit more about it in public, which is really difficult on you as a business. You need to catch that quick. And you can see some of these other ones where new themes appear. We heard from Ascension that new themes appeared about billing that did not come up in the private surveys. And so that's a perfect example. We heard from different customers throughout our event where they heard other things that would come back in the public feedback or the unsolicited versus private. So very interesting for you guys to think about as you start to overlap the different types of listening posts and then take action on them. You can go to the next slide. So I thought I'd share with you guys a little bit of an example, both healthcare and automotive. On the left and on the right, you basically have the classic common dashboard that we do per persona for customers. So this is actually live reputation dashboard that Pranav and I will talk to you about today. And mainly on the healthcare side, you would want to have surveys piped in from any type of survey provider, whether they're doing HCAHPS or whether they're doing specific acute care surveys. You want to be able to pull in all the different surveys and understand how you're doing relative to your star ratings on those surveys. And you might want to pull in NPS scores. You might want to pull in different types of things so that you have the feedback from everywhere. So you could pull in reviews, you could pull in your social feedback. And so as you see on the right in an automotive example, you might have everything from your listings, your reputation score, you might have your actual surveys coming from reputation, or you might have an outside third-party survey vendor. And so we pull that all together for you so that you can think through, okay, if I've got feedback anywhere, now let's start figuring out, well, what am I really learning about my customers? So as you can see on the right there, very clear, you have public feedback with reviews, this case 4.5 rating, right? And then you have reputation score, which looks at all the different feedback pieces. Then you also have things like social publishing, you have things like listings, quality, you'll have your surveys, feedback coming from both us and a third party. So I just wanted to give you guys an example of how we're thinking about private and public together, solicited and unsolicited together. Pranav, you have any comments about this before you get going?
Yeah, no, Joe, this is the perfect prototypical slide, because as you mentioned, today our customers will get feedback from consumers both on public sources of feedback like a review site or a social site. They'll get surveys, and we know that sometimes these may be collected using different platforms. And to your point, what we have done with Feedback Anywhere here, and that was also launched at Transform, was we brought all of that feedback independent of where it resides today, whether it's in our survey platform or in a third-party survey platform, whether we're doing the social collection or somebody else's. We're going to bring it all in a single place so you can act on that feedback. You can dashboard that feedback like you see here. You can generate notifications. You can reply to consumers, and you can use our text analytics offerings to generate insights. So for us, we know that the only way the previous slide was possible, where we were able to highlight certain themes that were missing from private data, is by doing this, bringing the feedback from anywhere and centralizing it so that you can understand what themes are emerging. If you could go to the next slide, please. So part of that analysis that we do is once you bring that feedback in, whether it's a review, survey, any kind of social recommendation, once you bring it into our platform, we'll obviously allow you to respond to it, dashboard it, but our text analytics algorithm in real time is going to analyze that piece of feedback, tag it with a particular category with a sentiment that is associated with it, and make it available in our Experience Insights product. If you haven't used the Experience Insights product, then you would know that it can today give you both strengths and weaknesses across all of your feedback, but also can traverse different types of feedback, like feedback on sales, feedback on service transactions, or feedback on intake, feedback on outpatient transactional surveys, and give you how you're performing. The big thing that we learned, and the reason we went towards the journey that Joe talked about, is if you're looking at transactions like these alone, yes, sales tactics and pressure is a big weakness. However, all you're doing is looking at the sales interaction only. You're not looking at any other interaction to understand, well, are we applying pressure to consumers who may be interested? And this particular one is an automotive example, but applies to any industry. What you can do is just look at that single transactional point. And I'll open up in the next couple of slides how we want to expand that, so that you're not just looking at a single point in the customer journey, you're looking across the customer journey. So Molly, I think you might have a poll here to go with this before we go to our next slide.
I do. I thought that the dashboard where we talk about how you can pull in feedback really from anywhere was really interesting. And I want to poll the audience and see. So Rocio, I don't know if you want to launch the poll question for the group. Curious if your organization uses more than one platform to track your entire customer experience. And really, this is kind of a yes or no question. I'm sure there's some nuances here, but yes is like you still have to go to more than one location to capture data. It can be very manual. Or B, no, you've got it all sorted out and you've consolidated it into one location. Interesting.
I love going to 5 different platforms, said the frontline user.
I mean, it's just great to have so much time.
Said no, whatever.
Yes.
All right, cool. Very interesting. All right. Carry on.
All right. So if we go back to the slides, please. So clearly the journey itself is not a single point transaction. As Joe shared with you, you become aware of a need, you start your journey In the case of automotive, you visit a dealer. In the case of a healthcare practitioner, you might actually look them up on Google, and so on and so forth for different industries, right? So in the case of automotive, coming back, you visit a dealer, you engage in a test drive, you talk about the financials and how you're going to purchase the car. Then the sales transaction happens. And if you had a good experience, you bring it to the same dealership for service. And if they're able to retain your business, you become an advocate. And this journey is a continuous journey because advocates will come back again to that same dealership in order to purchase a vehicle. So if you're thinking about sales tactics and pressure and you're just applying it to the sales touch point in the customer journey, it's not enough. It doesn't tell you where in this journey are you failing your customer or your consumer. And so what we have done is we are working on a customer journey platform that will allow you to mirror what you see here in the form of a journey inside our experience insights offerings. You're not just looking at a single touch point, but Rocio, if you could go to the next slide, please. You're looking at the entire journey. So if I'm analyzing this automotive journey, 2 or 3 things will stand out straight away. One, there's something happening in finance where the experience drops significantly, and that should be of interest to me. Why am I getting people? I'm doing a great job of Google, optimizing my search, getting people to come into the dealerships, getting them to test drive. As soon as it goes to finance, their experience drops significantly. So that's an area for me to dig into. But if I was trying to answer the question that my CEO had asked, hey, are we applying a lot of sales pressure? Then I could go through this and look at the fact that sales pressure is not just showing up in dealer visits, it is also showing up in finance. And that's the last place where pressure should be showing up. That's the last place where you should be making a consumer or a buyer, a prospective buyer, feel bad. And so that is the place where I can go back and say, look, Joe, it's not just the fact that we're applying sales pressure when somebody visits, it's the fact that we're applying sales pressure when financial discussions are happening. And oh, by the way, the impact of that is dragging down our finance journey significantly to the point where they might be walking out of the dealerships. And so that's an example of how we're able to do this for auto. We'll have similar journey stages for healthcare, for property management, for storage, and some of our other verticals that we work with. And we will ship out of the box certain templates and certain journey stages that we believe are the right stages for you. But we will, in true reputation fashion, allow you to customize that, add to that, remove stages that are not relevant to you. Why? Because we strongly believe, and we were talking to customers today, we strongly believe that every customer of ours is looking at journey analysis and journey mapping in their own way. They've already done some work. And so it's a lot easier for them to bring that work into reputation and use the reputation engine to now categorize this feedback. So this will be in beta towards the end of the year. And if you are a customer of ours and you have a login, reach out to your CSM and they'll help you understand how they can become a part of how you can become a part of this beta. If you're not a customer, reach out to the AE that you know, and they'll also share with you how you can start using this. So I'm going to pause here and see, Joe, if you have any thoughts on the journey slide or the journey product that we're creating. If not, we can go to understanding the competition.
No, I think it's great. I think it's good for everybody to see the full journey as an example. We have one of those examples in almost every industry. So let's jump into competitors, fully understanding them.
All right. So as we mentioned, the big goal for us is not only for you to understand how you're performing, but in a vacuum, if you're the only game in town, then you can look at your own data and basically drive towards what it is that your consumers need. However, we live in a dynamic space, right? Every industry has a bunch of competitors that are vying for the consumer's business, or for, if you're in healthcare, vying for the members' attention. And so to truly make an impact and to truly understand what should be your area of focus, you need to understand your competitions. If you go to the next slide, we launched a competitive intelligence offering towards the end of March, where we can now bring in reviews from your competitors and give you key insights, strengths, weaknesses, their sentiment maps on the review data. And it could be for a single competitor, it could be for a series of competitors that you track. The idea there being, you want to understand what it is that they're really strong at and what it is that they might be weak at. For the former, their strengths, you can then come up with, hey, why are we lagging them? For the latter, their weaknesses, you can use that as an opportunity to market better to the consumer, talking about how you are different. And so that reviews-based competitive intelligence offering has been gaining a lot of traction. We have had a lot of customers who tried it out and purchased it. We're super excited with the feedback that it's getting. But we decided that that's not the only aspect that we want to give you competitive intelligence on. A true competitive intelligence solution, if you go to the next slide, would look at not just review data, but would look at social data. Why? Because social feedback happens in real time. Sometimes you want to jump in on interactions. And if you follow Wendy's as a brand on Twitter, you'll see why they're so successful at that social media management part. So we want to give you that access to social competitive insights. Want to give you feedback on, we want to give you insights on how you're performing from a feedback perspective, from an NPS perspective. More importantly, we want to give you feedback on how you're performing on organic Google search. How are your competitors doing? How are you doing? What leads to the competition showing up in a local pack? What leads to you showing up in the local pack? So this year, we're going to be working heavily towards getting towards this mission. And if you go to the next slide, part of that, we are basically going to sync the taxonomies, the text analytics categories between both your existing tenant as well as your competitive tenant. Why? So that when you make changes, assume that you want to track your company values in our text analytics offerings. If you got that added to our platform, we want to bring that same taxonomy where you are tracking your values to the competitive tenant so that you can understand, is a competitor doing better at delivering values than I am, right? So that's going to be happening towards the November, December timeframe. If you go to the next slide, we're also working on building a social-based competitive intelligence solution where you can look across Twitter, Reddit, other forms of social feedback and start to understand how you are doing and how the competitive landscape is doing, not only on sentiment and the top categories being talked about, but also things like share of voice. What is virality for these brands? Which brands are the most viral? Again, we want to give you the ability to understand what it is that some of this competition is doing. This screenshot actually comes from a real live working example inside our platform. And if you want to understand how our social platform can help you with this competitive insights, you can reach out to your CSM or AE. We're refining this further so that some of this work becomes out of the box. You don't have to go configure this individually. If you go to the next slide, please. And then finally, search is where the customer journey begins. And what Google is starting to do is share with platforms like Reputation the ability to bring in keywords so that you can show businesses like you what are the keywords being used when you show up in search. We want to use this functionality to not only look at your data, but also look at competitive data and actually tell you, here's where your competitors are performing better and are starting to show up in the local pack. Here's where your competitors are ranking better on certain keywords that you need to be paying attention to. Again, want to bring this all into a single platform so that when you are advertising the fact that you are the quickest at turnaround times or you're the best at service, when consumers actually come through because you're advertising that, your sentiment can then show you whether you're actually staying true to that promise or not. And that end-to-end competitive insights, whether it's for you, whether it's for your competition, is invaluable data, right? That's the data that you then want to use to make business decisions. So super excited about competitive intelligence. Yeah, Joe, please go ahead.
Yeah, what's really cool if you guys just saw that, I mean, he just showed you 4 or 5 different ways you can look at that competitive intelligence, right? Whether it's in the local pack performance on search, or whether it's literally looking at the star ratings of your competition in a location or a brand based. And then he actually showed social mentions in your competition. So you can literally look at the social mention sentiment. He used a rental car example, which some of those are our customers, which is great. And so at Transform, you heard from Greystar, which is the largest property management company in the world. And they basically talked about how they use competitive intelligence strategically on whether they acquire properties or not. And so it makes a lot of sense, right? Because you want to see not only how your competition's doing, but you want to see it in different slices. And so what Pranav just shared with you is some of that is available today, and some of it we're building out for tomorrow. So it's cool. Let's go.
So
let's go to the next one, man. Now we gotta take some action.
All right.
Last but not least.
So this is the most important part of what we've been able to deliver, not just for your own data, but even for competitive data, through things like notifications, through things like response flows built right into the application. And when we looked at the fact that you have private feedback and public feedback, solicited and unsolicited, unfortunately, today our consumers have to go to 2 or 3 different places to respond. And so last year, in April of last year, we introduced this concept of an inbox. If you go to the next slide, our vision was to bring together all of that feedback, all of that interactions, all of those interactions into one place, so that whether it's on the web app or the mobile app, you can actually go in, see what you have to respond to those consumers' questions, whether these are leads asking you whether you're open on July 4th, or whether these are actual customers who want to understand how they can get out of a storage facility. Yes, those are actual questions that come in. We wanted to have this all in a single place. If you're out and about, and if you're a frontline employee, you're out and about, you don't have to be tethered to a laptop or a desktop. You can have your mobile phone, see what the consumers are interested in, respond back immediately. So this is available today. It interacts with social data as well as messaging data today. You can actually centralize all of that today. And what we're building, if you go to the next slide, is we're building the ability to bring all of your customer interactions in this one place. So for customers who are enrolled in our beta program, today Google and Facebook reviews can actually show up in this very inbox. It's going to become generally available soon, but it is available for our beta customers as part of the inbox. So when you log in, direct messages from Facebook or Twitter, Facebook posts or Twitter posts, as well as reviews on Google and Facebook, every one of these things are centralized in that single inbox today. And this is something we're super excited to extend the functionality on. We want to bring in your survey data into that same inbox. Why? Because when we talk to our customers, the number one thing they tell us is the frontline employees do not have enough time of day to go through different areas and understand where they need to respond to. So this inbox is going to be a smart inbox. It'll not only give you what you need to respond to, it'll basically categorize it with the right service level agreement so that you can respond to a review in 24 hours versus respond to a public post where somebody is asking you a question in an hour and a survey can wait probably 36 hours. So those are the types of things that we want to enable through this inbox so that your frontline employees even more efficient and can use their time even more wisely.
And the exciting thing here is a lot of our customers have been using the messaging product for SMS text and what have you for a while, whether they're scheduling an oil service or whether they're scheduling a property overview, what have you. But now to have it all come into one platform, then the next big question from all of our customers is, well, there's several different platforms that handle messaging, but can you do NLP against it and actually tell me what the sentiment of those messages are? And so I think Pranav's going to show you right here on the right side of this, as well as a couple more slides where we're going to be able to do that as well.
All right. If you go to the next slide, what Joe was talking about is when a message comes in, you'll see some categories associated with that message or social post or reviews. Think of this as the other end of what I showed you on the experience or journey insights. This is individual reviews, surveys, or messages stacked with that category data. And so if you click one more time, you'll see that we have added friendly staff, okay selection, bad experience as category information automatically to this. And so this is happening in real time as messages, as social posts, as reviews are coming in. We're in real time tagging them with this NLP information and based off of that, allowing you to take action on it. So if something is super positive, doesn't need feedback immediately, guess what? You can actually wait a day to respond. If something is super negative and they're talking about a pressing problem today before it becomes viral, well, it's time to jump in and respond within an hour. The platform certainly will allow you to set up SLAs around it. You can obviously override some of these SLAs and manually assign them to an individual to be responded to within a certain time frame or certain duration as well. Go to the next slide, please. And then finally, this is the single biggest thing, as Joe was mentioning. When we saw customers using our messaging solution and our inbox solution, the single biggest request that we got is the frontline employees sometimes are busy. So in the case of storage or in the case of healthcare, even, we had scenarios where the person who was responsible for the messaging was out and about, not close to their computer or laptop, and therefore missed out on responding to the consumer. And so what we introduced is this concept of automated responding, so that our bot can jump in and do one of two things. It can either respond on your behalf for most commonly asked questions, or it can actually tell the consumer, look, we're facing a busy schedule right now. There's nobody around to respond to you. If you give me your name and phone number, somebody would text you. Or if you ask me the question here, somebody will respond to you as soon as they are available. So this way, your consumer knows that it's not apathy because of which you're not responding to them. The prospect knows that it's not apathy because of which you're not responding to them. There's a lot of pressure right now. There's not a lot of staffing available, and that's why you're not able to respond to them. We're super excited about both the ability to tag this information and use automated responding to respond to some of this feedback. So to round it all up, if you go to the next slide.
To round it all up,
So
go ahead, Pranav.
No, I mean, Joe, take it if you want to summarize.
No, I was thinking to round it all up, we've now given you a whole new messaging platform, which means you have to decide what the SLAs around are on that. So we're going to now start to explore the concept of how quick do we need to respond to a review? How quick do we need to respond to a social tweet? How does that look versus an incoming message and a lead? And there's all kinds of SLAs around that. And so these are good things. Like, we're starting to see this from our customers where they're working through these different avenues into the platform. And that's good, because over time, you're going to save so much more time and money just by using a single platform. So again, I think what Pranav showed today is, how am I doing? Not only how am I doing, but how am I doing against my competitors? And then some kind of central capability to be able to answer those different types of data that's coming at us from both a structured and unstructured, solicited and unsolicited platform. So anyways, thanks, Pranav. I think we're going to open it up here a little bit. Molly, you're going to help us with some Q&A?
Yeah, we have a couple really good questions from our audience today regarding adding in some additional reviews from more platforms like Nextdoor or Yelp. Thoughts on that?
Pranav went off screen.
It's like,
I actually, the Nextdoor conversation is interesting because it's such a localized, intense, localized environment, whatever the topic is. But Pranav, I'll let you comment on both.
No, would defer to you on that one, Joe. Yelp is interesting because Yelp is one of those companies where they do not want businesses soliciting reviews at all. And to us, it's antithetical to what we believe in. To us, it's antithetical to what Google believes in, which is, if you are doing a good job, you do want to ask your consumers about how they feel so that they can impact other consumers that are looking for services. And so it is actively something that Yelp struggles to understand. And so in scenarios where Yelp comes in, we can actually leverage some of that intelligence to provide you, whether it's your insights, whether it's your competitive insights, we can provide you some signal intelligence on that. They, however, do not want you to be soliciting for feedback. So just something that our customers need to know. Nextdoor is something that we are evaluating as we speak. We've talked to their business development teams. It's one of those niche review sites where it applies in scenarios where you're super localized versus our customers today are not localized at that zip code level.
Cool. Next question, Molly.
I think this is in reference to Inbox. When will this be available to current customers? And I think this is pulling in all of those like reviews, surveys, like you were talking about some of the beta customers. When will that be GA?
So the reviews functionality is going to be GA in Q3. So stay tuned to that. We'll definitely announce it through our channels. The social and the messaging functionality is available today. And if you use our platform for either social publishing or monitoring, or you use our platform for any kind of GMB work, you can actually start leveraging messaging and social posting today in our inbox.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question. I want to just, for people who are interested in our betas, what would you recommend? What's the best course to getting involved with that?
Yeah, so there are two options. You can obviously reach out to your CSMs. They're always happy to help guide you. But within the platform, there's also an ability to enroll in beta. And obviously, if you're a reputation rock star, you have participated in beta programs before. In the platform, once you log in and go to help, you will see the ability to enroll in beta programs. And we will reach out to you as soon as we get that notification or signal from you.
There's some really quick ones that are easy. One question was, do we support Google messaging today? And the answer is yes. What else is really quick here we could answer?
What about the mass texting?
That's a good question.
That was an interesting one.
So mass texting is available to our beta clients today. It's going to be GA soon. We believe strongly in the ability to do mass text or SMS-based campaigns. The only caveat to this is because there are some international clients, reach out to your CSM to see whether mass texting is available in your region or not.
Molly, did you have any other questions?
No, I think we're at time. I don't know what we do. We want to just close it out?
We could close it out. Thanks everybody for joining. We love going live here with our customers and prospects. So appreciate you guys joining today. If you have any questions or you want to reach out to us, certainly feel free to reach out to your CSM or hit the 800 line or come onto our website and ask to be contacted. And we appreciate you guys coming today. Thanks, Molly, for leading us. Thank you, Pranav, for walking us through some of our features. It's always fun to talk to people out there in the real world, right? Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, guys.